What's the difference between information and transformation? Well, we live in a world that is now filled with information. If you think about it, you can pretty much find anything online that you need to. It's like the days when we were kids, those of us who were my age. Uh, there was a library you could go to. There were encyclopedias if your family happened to have one where you could get some information. Now, everything, virtually everything, is at our fingertips. So information is abundant. And sometimes that information, how it's communicated to us, shared with us through algorithms and the such, can actually be disinformation, or it can leave us in rabbit holes. It can take us down to the spiral of groupthink and echo chamber where we think our view of the world is the right one, all of that stuff. So information is definitely not transformation. Just because we have access to it all doesn't mean it's actually serving us well. And what kind of information are we accessing? Is it information that we need that's going to help us move to the next level or stage of our beingness? Are we going to be expansive and growing, or is it going to contract us into a narrow, fear based mode of existence and reality? We see that going on big time right now. And I don't need to elaborate. So, what do we want in terms of transformation? Well, maybe we don't know, but we're definitely seeking information, because if you look at the amount of engagement in podcasts where you're activating your brain by hearing these interviews, hearing these experts speaking on certain topics, hearing people like we do in the Wisdom Trust share their stories so that they can inspire and uplift you. And that's just it. Podcasts can be very inspirational, sometimes slightly educational, but I think their primary vehicle, they're primarily a vehicle of inspiration. And that's why we like them so much, because most of us want to be inspired. The challenge is taking some of that information, some of those inspirational moments that we're hearing, and moving them into transformation. That's the gap. So a lot of us are sitting, listening, nodding our heads. Yeah, I like that. Great. I'm going to listen to the next one. And then it just becomes this more and more information being consumed in our consumer culture that we live in, but yet not operationalized in terms of transformation. And that's where the deficit lies. Books are really, really important, and they always have been, because they give us information, they educate us, they inform us. But I have friends who are avid book readers, and I'm like, well, if you've read so many books and you have so much information, why are you still stuck in the same situations you've been? Because again, information is not transformation. We can think it is because we're engaging in the content and putting it into our brains, but that doesn't mean that we activate it in any particular way, because we live largely in patterned ways of being. So information isn't going to change that. It needs to be activated. Videos also are helpful. So a lot of YouTube stuff, the content on YouTube is absolutely incredible. And so you can learn a lot, you can explore a lot, you can be engaged a lot, you can be encouraged a lot. But does that mean it's going to be transformational in nature? In all likelihood, no. Because what needs to happen is there needs to be a catalyst to take that information into action. Because absent action, nothing changes. Information is power, there, and knowledge is power, but only if you use it, only if you activate it. And that's where most of us, 99% of us, drop the ball. That's why we languish and get frustrated with where our lives are at, because we aren't activating. We're ruminating, we're reflecting, but we're not actually doing stuff to make the change. What is the element that's missing? Well, it's conversations, it's practice, it's reflection, and it's building relationships. So these are four elements that can take information into transformation. So how does conversation apply? Well, if you're having, let's look at the model we use in the Wisdom Trust. We have a lot of uh, uh, questions that are posed in terms of reflection. And when those questions are posed and we get to reflect on them, especially in a group or a small group or a dyad, then we get to dive deep into, what does that mean in my life? How has that played out? And then we get to hear the other person or people sharing their views and experiences. And through this conversing on a said topic, that's where the gears can start to shift and change can start to happen. But that doesn't affect change unless there's activation, right? So the practice part of it. And when we're in community and having conversations, you can certainly do this on your own, but it's facilitated more readily when you are in a community where you have accountability, where you have some way to ensure that practice is happening. This can happen through coaching as well, where you have a coach who's holding you accountable. So practice making these incremental changes, adopting new techniques into your life, new applying new tools to help you address a challenge or a situation differently. That practice is important. And then in that practice, there has to be some kind of discipline, rigor, and consistency. Because to make a new habit effective, there's different numbers out there, but anywhere from 30 to 90 days. 90 days is pretty solid, right? 44 days maybe. But if you're engaging in a new practice and you commit to it for 90 days, that's when it becomes a deep transformational thing because it's part of who you are. And then the other part of this that's really important is the reflection element. So when we are transforming, there needs to be this capacity to reflect and to really look at where we're at with greater awareness, right? So where are we starting from? Where are we hoping to get to by way of making a change? What is the transformation we're looking for? And that constant element of reflection, doing some analysis along the way. How is this going? Is it working? Is it serving me? What's coming up for me? And these are all really, really important parts of the conversation that you're having with the peers that you're working with, the support group that you're working with. Again, those initial questions of reflection help us to move forward to consider different things differently. And then once we're in it, the ability, because we're already learning to flex that reflection muscle, we flex that muscle while we're in the process of transformation to make sure that we're on track, to make sure that it's aligning. And to understand that when we're making change, there's going to be mental resistance because the mind, the brain is wired, the reptilian brain is wired not for change. It's wired for the familiar to keep us safe and comfortable. And when new stuff comes in, it's going to go, no, you can't do that. And it's going to push back, right? So transformation, it goes against a number of hurdles, right? And the more that we have opportunities to have supports to make the change so that information that we're getting can become the transformation that we're seeking. So conversations with others, practicing and for a specific and disciplined period of time, and reflecting along the way. And again, the relationships that are helping and building with this work that you're doing together. At this stage in life, in midlife, it's imperative that we have support. In the gay community, we talk about chosen family. And one of the things that I'm emphasizing in the Wisdom Trust is that we activate chosen family. Some of you already have that, but it may need time for a reflection because maybe those folks who are uh, assumed to be the chosen family from 10, 20 years ago, maybe things have shifted. Maybe values have shifted and changed. And maybe some of those relationships are just a stuck pattern. Maybe not, but that's a good reflection as well, because we want to make sure that those who are having our backs, those who are our chosen family as we're moving into this stage of life, are actually that. We hear stories of people who may have, had a bit of a challenge come up. Maybe it's a health issue. And all of a sudden, those folks who were their chosen family are not there. And it could be someone they've met just recently who all of a sudden shows up with a great big open heart and ready to support them. Right. So we want to make sure that the relationships that we're building along the way are also part of that transformation. We don't go through this stuff alone. We are not isolated creatures. We are not islands in a sea. We are part of social constructions, social actions, social animals. We are humans who need others in our realm. So this is really why community matters. And a lot of us, after our 50s and into our 60s and 70s, we may pull back. Some of that is conscious, but some of it isn't. And maybe it's time that we look at that and kind of say, how can I be out there still, not in the way we were in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, trying to be the socialite at the bar and all that stuff. But how can I be out there getting connection, building community, doing the transformation that I want to do as I'm moving forward in my life? These are all really important elements of the aging process. And they're uplifting elements too, right? This is about renewal and expansion in new and different ways. And we have to think about this stuff consciously. We have to make it part of the journey, the process. Otherwise, we sit back, we wither, and we fade. The gay community is harsh in terms of aging. It turns its back on us. So we need to come together and counter that, but we don't counter it by rallying and the placards. Leave that all to the activists, the younger activists. What we're doing is we're creating our own sense of cohesion here. And when we do that, it becomes a model. And that model will be honored and respected and replicated by other communities as well. So this is what the Wisdom Trust is all about. We want to have conversations that are going to be helping us to not just be more informed, but to transform. So I want to leave you today with a question. What conversation has changed your life more than any book ever did? A single conversation, or maybe a series of conversations. So think about that. The connections, the inspiration we get from hearing other people's stories, the engagement in content that maybe isn't part of our normal way of thinking. This is where transformation happens. So what conversation has changed your life more than any book ever did, or YouTube video, or podcast? All right, I'm going to leave it at that for today, and I will be back tomorrow.